Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to the last Pewter Report podcast of the year. Not of football season, but of 2020. Mark Cook joins me today. I'm Scott Reynolds, if you don't know that by now. And we're going to preview Bucs Falcons Week 17 action. A chance, Mark, for this Bucs team to go 11-5, which Bruce Arians said the other day they want to do. They want to get that fifth seed. Actually, they have it. They want to hang on to it and go 11-5 because 11-5 is special. 10-6, it's not a lock that you're going to make the playoffs. This 10-5 Buccaneer team has already locked it in a playoff spot, but they're gunning for 11-5. No resting the starters, right?
And I wouldn't either. I mean, we've seen teams in the past that have tried that, and I believe it was Indianapolis several years ago, rested their starters like the last 2 weeks, and then they were awful in the playoffs. I mean, different teams do it different ways, but the big thing about 11-5 versus 10-6 and that 5-6 seed is, although it's very unlikely the Buccaneers do host a playoff game, again, if they are the fifth seed as opposed to the sixth seed, then the chances might be that they would have a better chance of hosting a home playoff game. Again, don't go rushing out trying to buy tickets or anything because it's probably not going to happen. But we saw the Saints lose last year to Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs, so crazier things have happened, but we'll see. But I'm glad they're going to play their starters. Something we'll talk about later in the show, getting Mike Evans that record, man, being the first player to start his first 7 seasons with 1,000 yards. Not first player in Buccaneer history, first player in NFL history. That's huge in my opinion. It really is.
No, it is. And also, too, Ronald Jones is expected to come back this week. And, we'll see how he does playing with that pinky that's got some pins in it. But Rojo is 100 yards away from 1,000 yards. And I know that the Buccaneers want to establish the run and get that going. As we've seen, certainly in years past, teams that run the ball well, they look no further than last year. The Tennessee Titans, San Francisco 49ers, it's important to have a ground game, especially if there's inclement weather. Look what the Packers did to the Titans, running for over 200 yards on Sunday Night Football in the cold, snowy environment at Lambeau Field, Mark.
Yeah, you're going to have to run the football, especially if you're going to go to a place like Green Bay. And really, you're going to have to run the football if you're going to take on New Orleans because they're such a physical defense. And if you ever allow them just to tee off, if you get way behind and you get out of your scheme or your plays as far as running the football goes, that's just bad. That's just a bad thing for the Buccaneers, really, any offense. So getting the running game going is good. My suggestion to Bruce Arians, if you're listening, is to take the opening kickoff, have Mickens down it at the 1-yard line, give the ball to Rojo, let him go 99 yards like he did in Carolina. Then he only needs one more carry to get the 100 yards. Then you can get him out of the game. Next play, throw a 40-yard pass to Mike Evans and get him out of the game. And then, then get Tom Brady out pretty quick.
Well, the good news is we're about 4 minutes into this podcast, and we're not going to get out of here anytime soon. We have plenty of Bucs Falcons preview, plus the injury report, which just came out to get to you guys out there in Pewter Nation. Before we do that, as you know, Mark, the Pewter Report podcast is proudly energized by our good friends at Celsius. Let's go. All right, Mark, I saw a Celsius can in your hand. What are you drinking today, my friend?
I have the sparkling grapefruit, and don't tell my doctor that I'm drinking this because it's got a little bit of caffeine boost, and we're trying to keep the blood pressure down. But every once in a while, you just do need a burst of energy, and Celsius is a great way to do it. And my doctor will be happy to know there's no sugar in it, and that's the big thing. Right. So many of these energy drinks are just loaded down with sugar, and they'll give you an instant high, an instant energy boost, and then you crash. It's somebody who takes medication for diabetes, Wilford Brimley and I, we know those highs and lows, those highs and those crashes. And even people who don't have sugar issues, if you jack your sugar up with a high energy fructose type drink, you're going to crash. It's going to give you a boost initially, but it's not going to last very long. And Scott, I was standing in line. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention. Can I mention which store it was at where I found Celsius?
Absolutely.
Wawa was. I was in line at Wawa, and of course, typical Wawa fashion, 9 people making sandwiches, 1 person checking people out. So it was about 15 deep. So it was all the way by the drink thing. And I said, well, let me just look at the energy drink section. And there was Celsius there. So if you're looking for Celsius in the Tampa Bay area, the Wawa stores do carry it. And I recommend you try it. And let us know on Twitter, and make sure to tag Celsius if you enjoy it.
Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy. And just like Mark said, no sugar and no preservatives. Tried a new flavor today, Mark. I tried kiwi guava, and I'll tell you what, they nailed this flavor. It tastes like kiwi guava. There's no doubt about it. They absolutely nailed this flavor. Not one of my top 3 favorites, but it's definitely, I would say, maybe number 5. This is, if you're looking for something on the sweeter side, this is the one right here. And my wife Ashley loves this. So we shared this today, and it's probably number 2 on her list behind watermelon. For me, and I think John's either tied with orange or grape. Mine's is orange. Still my number 1 go-to, but haven't tried the grapefruit yet, but I will give that a try next. And Mark, you talked about Wawa, Publix, Target. There's a lot of places where you can buy Celsius energy drinks. The place that we recommend too is if you go on pewterreport.com to read those stories from Mark and John and Taylor and Matt and myself, you're going to see those Celsius banners. Click on those banners. They'll take you right to Amazon. You can buy them by the case. If you're not sure which flavor that you want to buy a whole case of, we'll get the variety pack. That way you can sample a ton of the flavors and then make your decision. And when you buy in bulk, you save more money. So make sure that you are drinking Celsius as you ring in the new year. Mark, this is our last show of 2020, and we have the last, I should say the second to last injury report. We're not going to have a podcast tomorrow. We will have our next podcast all the way next year, Sunday afternoon, actually Sunday evening, 7:30 after the Bucs Falcons play at 1 o'clock. So we'll have all of our post-game coverage plus the post-game podcast, hopefully for Buccaneer fans out there, and the team celebrating an 11-5 record. Mark, today I'm going to read these players off, and you tell me what the update is, and you think the likelihood that these players will go. Tom Brady did not participate today. Don't worry.
No, he's hurt. He's hurt.
No, he's not hurt. He's fine.
Woo,
veteran day off, no big deal. Carlton Davis, groin injury, limited participation. What did Bruce Arians say about Carlton today on the conference call?
Bruce said he's getting better. And, I really think if last week at Detroit were to be a playoff game, I think Carlton might win that game. And but again, why risk it? I mean, they certainly want to get that 11 wins at the same time, but they don't want to. This team expects to make a deep run in the playoffs. Whether they do or not, it doesn't matter. They really expect to. And if they do that, then they need to be a little extra cautious with the guy, because you don't want to go into the playoffs without your top cornerback in Carlton Davis. But Bruce said today that he's doing better, so I suspect that there's a good chance that he plays. Better chance certainly than he had last week. Maybe he gets in there for a few series, and if the Buccaneers can get ahead, he would probably be one of those first guys to come out.
I think you're exactly right there. Mike Edwards had a hip injury, didn't finish that game up at Detroit, was limited today. Kind of a wait-and-see situation with Mike Edwards, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. And that's fortunately for the Buccaneers, it's a fairly deep position. I mean, Mike Edwards has made some plays this year, but it's Jordan Whitehead and Winfield Jr. are the 2 top guys. And those are the guys the team counts on, and they've been very durable all year long. So it's not if he can't go, I don't think it's a big loss or going to hurt the team, unless Whitehead or Winfield Jr. were to get hurt. But I think they'll be okay without him. But I suspect it's another guy. It's a hip flexor, Bruce said on Monday, and I don't think it's very serious.
Leonard Fournette limited also in practice with an abdomen injury. We saw him score a key touchdown, would kind of put the game away early up there in Detroit. Then we saw Keyshawn Vaughn really kind of take over and get the majority of the carries and yards. I would suspect that Leonard's going to be a go this week. Now let's get to the main guy, Ronald Jones' finger. He's off the COVID list, but he practiced with that finger that has some pins in it. Limited participation. What did Coach Arians say about Ronald Jones' availability? Sounds like he's going to play.
Yeah, no, I think they want to get him that 1,000 yards, and they're going to just kind of see how it goes. They want him to be able to protect himself, not do any further damage, but if Chris Godwin, again, can go out and catch footballs with basically the same injury, then I think Ronald Jones can hang on to the football with that same type of injury. I think they want to certainly get him that 1,000 yards if possible. I think Ronald's going to be a go. Hopefully he's in good shape, good cardiovascular, good. He stayed in football shape the last couple of weeks. I'm sure he did. So he should be fine.
And then rounding out the injury report for the Buccaneers, Jeremiah Ledbetter, who got his first sack last week in Detroit with a calf injury, did not participate today. Any indication about him?
No, I don't think Bruce said anything about him. And from what I understand is that injury actually occurred when he was celebrating getting that very first sack. I think he may have jumped a little too high or was rowing the boat a little too hard. I don't remember exactly what it is. So, but no, I mean, it was good to see him get that first sack, just like we talked about with Pat O'Connor and Anthony Nelson. Yeah. Who knows if the Buccaneers are going to be legitimately counting on these guys 2 or 3 years down the road. I mean, they're developmental guys. The Buccaneers have them on a roster for a reason. So to see them getting some production in their limited number of reps that they've had, that's a good sign, moving into the future for the team. Agreed.
Last injury for the Bucs, Jason Pierre-Paul, he's been battling a knee injury all year long, limited participation. He might even, I'm going to guess, he might even get the veteran day off tomorrow. He will play on Sunday. Yeah. There is nothing that's going to keep this guy out for sure. Looking at the Falcons.
Bruce said the other day that, there's some guys that, he'd have to take a stick to and beat him in the head to get him not to play in this game. And Jason Pierre-Paul is one of those guys. He's not going to not play in that game.
And Jason Pierre-Paul, 9.5 sacks, Mark. Devin White closing in, 9 sacks. Shaq Barrett, 8 sacks. This could be a situation, and they only got to Matt Ryan 3 times. Devin White had all 3 of the sacks for the Buccaneers 3 weeks ago when these teams first played. And Jason Pierre-Paul would love to make amends for last week because I think he had an opportunity to get 2 sacks, just let him slip out of his hands. Also had a pick 6 that he dropped as well.
Yeah.
But Jason Pierre-Paul, I think, wants to get to double digits. Devin White does as well, and then you've got Shaq Barrett in the mix. It could be a big day for the Bucs pass rush. Matt Ryan got sacked 4 times in Kansas City, and if that's the case, you'd love to see the Bucs, for the first time in franchise history, have 3 guys hit double-digit sacks. Only happened a couple times. Chidi Hanatu and Warren Sapp did it back, I want to say, in 97, I believe. And then Marcus Jones and Warren Sapp, I want to say, in 2001 or 2000. Well, one of those 2 years, they both had double-digit sacks. So interesting to see. The Falcons, certainly more banged up. We did not see cornerback Darqueze Dennard. He was out with a quadricep injury the first go-around. Same thing with Julio Jones. Did not play in that game with a hamstring injury. Both of those players did not participate today for Atlanta. The same thing with Charles Harris, not injury-related, but he was not at practice. Brandon Powell, the wide receiver, foot injury, did not participate. And then you've got a couple of other players. Their linebacker, who has had a really good year, Foyesade Oluwakan. He's got a ankle injury. He was limited. Ito Smith, the running back, rib injury, was limited. Luke Stocker, tight end, elbow injury, limited.
Oh no, not Luke.
Alex Mack, concussion, limited participation. And let's see, Matt Hennessy, the other center, knee injury, full participation. And then limited participation for left guard James Carpenter with a groin injury. Defensive end John Kaminsky, limited with the shoulder. And Marlon Davidson, the rookie out of Auburn, knee injury, limited participation. So certainly more injuries on the Falcons side.
Well, when you're playing on a 4 or 5 win football team with a lame duck coach, no general manager, Scott, I might sprain my thumb if I was covering this football team, you know what I mean, and not be able to cover the game this week. I mean, who wants to be a part of that? I mean, now we say that we saw the Falcons last year. They were fighting for Dan Quinn's job when they came into Raymond James Stadium and beat the Buccaneers, a game the Buccaneers really, really wanted to win, and had a lot to play for. We're talking about Jameis Winston's future here in Tampa Bay, and yet they were able to beat the Buccaneers in that game. But I think it's going to be different this week, Scott. I think I don't think it's going to be Detroit bad. I mean, Detroit had checked out obviously before the game even started. The Falcons, are going to go and play hard, but it's not a meaningful game to them. They know they're they're not fighting for anything at all. In fact, right now they're sitting at number 4. If they were to have a draft, the only thing they would do if they win would be to screw up their draft position, honestly.
Yeah. Exactly. We have a question now from Nate Pitts. What if Tampa didn't let Rojo or Mike Evans get those records so it could be used against them in re-signing? Well, Mike Evans has re-signed for several years, so that's not really a factor. With Rojo, listen, if you get 900 yards or 1,000 yards, I don't think the agent's going to let the team off the hook, especially when Rojo is averaging around 5 yards per carry and has been a top 5 runner for pretty much the entire season. So I think Bruce Arians is the kind of coach he wants to see those guys get those milestones. So, good question, but I think that we're going to be seeing Rojo do everything the Bucs can to get him 1,000 yards. He just needs 100. He's at 900 right now. Khalif Young asks, any word on us looking at snacks? No.
Yes. Oreos are good. I'm a big Cheez-Its. Not that snacks. Never mind. Go ahead. You answer.
Yeah. So I don't think that they're looking at snacks at all. I think that there was some interest earlier in the season. Of course, we're talking about Damon Harrison, the defensive lineman that Seattle waived the other day. I think that with the Buccaneers, when they didn't have the opportunity to get him, when he wanted to stick with the Seahawks earlier in the year, well, that unfortunately kind of closed the door there. The Bucs went out, Jason Light went out and made the trade for Steve McLendon, and I think that he's been a good role player, and so we've certainly seen Tampa Bay not really drop much in terms of their rush defense. They're still the top ranked team in the league when it comes to rushing defense. I think they're at 72 yards per game, and that's actually 77 yards per game. The next closest team is Indianapolis with 92 yards per game. So they felt a little bit of the drop-off mark without having Vita Vea from a pass rush standpoint. I don't think that Raheem Nunez-Roches he's not the pass rusher that Vita Vea was. Same thing with Steve McLendon. Although against Atlanta, Raheem Nunez-Roches had a hell of a game getting pressure, but wasn't able to get home.
But it's got to be consistent pressure, and that's the one thing you can count on with Vita Vea. You're not going to move him; he's going to collapse the middle of the pocket. And when you're playing a guy like Drew Brees, you need that because Drew isn't running anywhere. Now, when they bring Taysom Hill in, he's going to get outside. But guys like Matt Ryan and guys like Drew Brees love to step up in the pocket, and that's where having number 50 in the middle was so valuable, I think, to this football team. And I think it's something that they miss, and they're going to miss until next year when he comes back.
Yeah, Greg DeCruz asks, I noticed that Anthony Auclair has been inactive the last few games. This Canadian thing. Greg's our Great North friend. No, I don't think it's a Canadian thing at all. It's not even an Anthony Auclair thing. I think that the team they're set at wide receiver, and they like Tanner Hudson better as a receiver, right? And so if they're going to activate those players, those tight ends, it's going to be Gronkowski and Cam Brate and Tanner Hudson. And I think that they've gotten by with Joe Haeg as that third tight end. They're bringing an extra offensive tackle for some added beef. Nothing against Auclair, but he's 260, 265, whereas Joe Haeg's over 300 pounds. And I think that just helps them a little bit more on the perimeter when they go to those big packages and they run the ball. Mark, speaking of big packages, Justin Smith with a $50 super chat. The kids and I listen to you guys all the way back home from Atlanta to OKC. Thanks so much for all the great content this year. Thank you, Justin. That is one. I
appreciate it, man. I thought when you said big packages, we were going to transition into the manscaping thing, but I was wrong. But I would rather transition into a great super donation chat from Justin Smith. Really appreciate it, man. And hopefully we keep it PG enough that you allow the kids to continue to listen. But if you don't mind, have them download it separately so we can boost our numbers up. We don't mind family sharing, but maybe they can download it on their phone too.
Cartier Walker says JPP is the best free agent Bucs that the team's ever had, aside from Vincent Jackson. Well, I will say this: technically,
he was a trade.
Jason Pierre-Paul. So I would say it's probably the best trade other than John Gruden, right? Because John Gruden resulted in the Super Bowl his first year. But in terms of players, I think that Jason Pierre-Paul has kind of earned that distinction as the best player acquired in a trade by the Buccaneers. And I think Mark, you have to say with the year that Tom Brady's having that, I mean, you can say Simeon Rice and you can say Brad Johnson, but this year, if the Buccaneers were to go to the Super Bowl, that Tom Brady is the best free agent signing of all time, especially since he set some records. And if the Bucs do get to 11-5, Mark, it's a record they've only achieved twice before. In 1999, they were three times. 1999 they were 11-5, and Super Bowl year they were 12-4. So technically they got to 11 wins there, and then they were also 11-5 in 2005. So this is rarefied air for the Buccaneers if they win on Sunday, beating the Falcons and moving to 11-5.
Yeah, no, Tom Brady is definitely up there. I mean, he's probably just a little below Eric Wright as a free agent signing. He was always my favorite. What a jerk that guy was, by the way. Scott, one day in the offseason, you and I just need to do a show and not even really talk about football as much as just talk about the crap we've seen behind the scenes and some of the real turds in the locker room. And that was a guy that I just some guys rub you the wrong way. He was one of them for sure.
He had Derek Ward. And you know what? That was the same free agent class that Mark Dominic had. So it was crazy, right? You had Vincent Jackson, I believe, that year.
Mm-hmm.
You had Carl Nicks, who was great up until Mercer, right? Yeah. And then you had Derek Ward and Eric Wright. So it was like two really, really solid.
No, Ward was before that class. Ward was, I think that wasn't the same year. No, because I wasn't there for Derek Ward. I think that was 2010 for Ward or 9, something like that. It was a couple years.
Yeah, it was still during the Raheem Morris years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was during the Raheem Morris years.
And then Mercer came under Schiano. Sorry.
Did you tell him that? Did you say a story one time about he complained because the Buccaneers didn't give him enough socks to practice in? He said something like the Giants gave me more socks or something like that. They knew right away that this guy was going to be a bad apple.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. We got a great apple here from Jordan Schneiderman. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Jordan Schneiderman, lifelong Bucs fan here in Canada. Boy, we got some Canadian love today. That's awesome. My first year not coming down to Tampa for a game since 2008. Thanks, COVID. Here's hoping I was the curse all along, and we go all the way. Love the podcast. Keep up the great work, guys. Really appreciate that super chat. Wow.
No, I appreciate that, Jordan. And Jordan, from being from Canada, I want to thank you and Greg DeCruz for sharing Gordon Lightfoot with the world. He's my favorite Canadian musician. I hate Rush, but I just watched a documentary on Gordon Lightfoot on Amazon the other day. If you're a Gordon Lightfoot fan, check it out. It's a great program. But thank you for sharing Gordon Lightfoot. Don't really care about Rush, and there's been some other bad bands from Canada, but we appreciate.
I like Harem Scarum. It's one of my favorite bands. They're a rock band. You wouldn't know who they are, but Harem Scarum is like bands for me. Greg DeCruz, sticking with the Canadian theme. The last time this team had a Keyshawn on it, they won the Super Bowl. That's true. That's something I even texted Jason Light after he drafted Keyshawn Vaughn. I wasn't like super thrilled about the Keyshawn Vaughn pick, although Vaughn really has come on behind the scenes, and we kind of saw him. I thought make some phenomenal runs up there in Detroit with his extended playing time. But I said, you did yourself a favor, Jason. Jason Light wasn't here in 2002. Obviously, Rich McKay was the general manager. But I said the Bucs have only won a Super Bowl with a player named Keyshawn on the roster. So maybe that has helped the Buccaneers from a cosmic karma way in terms of getting that on there. What about Anne Murray, Mark?
Yeah, Anne's okay, but she's no Alanis Morissette. If we're going to talk female Canadian artists, we're going to go with Alanis over Anne Murray all day long.
That's a great pick right there. Buck 9755. Need a pod on these stories. I agree, Mark. Yes, and that's what the off season's for, folks. We got games to break down. We're in the middle of a playoff hunt right here, but we have some off season podcasts to fill, and there's going to be plenty of free agency talk and plenty of dishing out player grades and game grades on future podcasts. In January, maybe in February, right? If things go as planned for the Buccaneers, we'll have plenty of free agency and draft talk, but we'll also have plenty of time to break down some stories. In my 25 years of covering the Buccaneers, Mark, how many years have you covered? This is year 11.
My 10th full season. Yeah, 10th full time season. Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. In that story podcast, Scott, you and I, we may even reveal the player who wore pink underwear in the locker room on a regular basis. Yes. Not going to give that away now. You guys probably have your guesses, but Anyway, There's a lot of great stories we can tell you.
It would be better.
It would be better. It would be better if it wasn't COVID times and you could catch me and Scott out for a beer. That's when we really tend to spill the goods. Oh, yeah. I don't know if we want to do it all on the podcast, but yeah,
that's true.
There's some good stuff.
Big Earn 849 coming through with the super chat. Come on, guys. Cook hasn't had a new camera since the Bucs last playoff run. Where's the poor man's Trevor Sikkema John at? Well, we can say this now. John's wife, Britt, had emergency appendectomy surgery. She had appendicitis literally the other night. So John's not on the pod.
And I just want to report that I was able to take it out. There were no complications.
Dr. Cook in the house.
Yes, she's doing well. Gave her some aspirin and bandaged it up. She should be fine.
Yep. So we're certainly grateful and glad that Britt is home. Britt Ledyard is home, ringing in the new year with her family in the state of Florida, and that was more of a routine surgery without complications. So great to hear it. John will be back on Sunday.
He's probably already got her up taking care of the kids while he's breaking down more, game film of 7th round draft prospects. You know what I mean? Yep. Poor lady. All
right. So Cartier says we need Andrew Adams back there with Winfield. Now I'll tell you what. We have a little bit of a different twist. John came through, and I know he teased it last week, but he came through today with the new look dime defense could improve pass rush and Bucs coverage article. And you really got to check it out. He's got some different personnel twists. I'm not going to give it all away, but how would you like Devin White? How would you like Devin White as an edge rusher, or maybe lined up over the guard as a stand-up kind of defensive tackle, if you will, because that's where Devin White's at his best. And then how would you like Ross Cockrell in there in the slot instead of SMB? Go check out that article if you haven't. The new look dime defense could improve Bucs coverage, pass rush by John Ledyard. So I think he got that article written while waiting for Britt to leave the hospital. So
he told his kids, go in the room, entertain yourself. Daddy's got to work.
Exactly.
This guy's like a machine. He's our version of Greg Allman. I like to tell people.
Yes.
I mean, he may end up dying a lonely old man because he shuns everybody, but that's okay. He's going to be one hell of a writer and football analyst for sure.
No doubt about it. We're happy to have him on the Pewter Report team. Yep. And, listen, maybe it's not all Tom Brady. Maybe it's not all Rob Gronkowski. Maybe the Bucs are having this run because John Ledyard's here. Who knows?
Well, we know it's because Trevor left. I mean, look what the Panthers are doing this year. Good job, Trevor. He goes to Carolina. They suck, even worse than normal.
Nate Pitts asks, Mark, be sure to ask when the season's over, who would you want in his locker room to date your sister the most?
Oh,
okay. We'll say that for the future pod.
That was actually the Minnesota Vikings. I don't remember who it was, but I think Nate might have been the one that sent me the video, and they thought it would be a good what's cooking type segment. And in the Minnesota locker room, almost every single person said they would not want Stephon Diggs to date their sister. It was a really funny thing. You can probably Google it on YouTube. Yeah, we'll try and do that if we ever get back in the locker room again. I got all kind of great things planned.
Yeah,
I mean, my big thing was, would Rob Gronkowski have been the best What's Cooking guest in the history of What's Cooking? I mean, he might have even been better than Cameron Brate. He would have been great. He might have upstaged me. That would have been tough to do, but he probably would have.
He would have been phenomenal. There's no doubt about it. And I think even Tom Brady, if we could have had Tom on What's Cooking, he would have probably disapproved of all of the food options because they weren't healthy enough, right?
I would have hammered him for his stir-fried tofu with B12 vitamins sprinkled in on top for sure.
Exactly. And then he could walk in with the big TB12, like water,
yes.
Picture. It's like,
right.
2 feet long. So I'll tell you what, Mark, let's really kind of dive into some Bucs Falcons here, right? I mean, just to recap quickly, this is a Falcons team that simply can't finish games. You can look no further than the last 2 games, up 17-0, and they choked away the lead. The Buccaneers came back in the fourth quarter, actually in the second half, scoring 31 points, but took the lead in the fourth quarter. Didn't look back. 31-27 was your final. Tom Brady went ballistic in the fourth quarter of that game after a slow start, passed for over 300 yards in that quarter alone. And then the Falcons last week gave up a lead again to Kansas City. They played the Chiefs incredibly tough at Arrowhead, and it was a low-scoring affair. Young-Ho Koo, who is a phenomenal kicker, had a costly
Pro
Pro
Bowl
Bowl
misses a 39-yard kick
Yep.
that would have tied the game.
Yep. So again, Falcons can't close games, but you know what? They'll stay in it the entire way. This is a team that doesn't quit. They're not nearly as bad as the Lions.
I think they're going to quit this week. This is the week they quit.
Well, this is the week where teams do quit. We've seen some final seasons for the Buccaneers where they've really kind of mailed it in. But
you mean Shiano's last year when they went to New Orleans and lost 100-0?
Yes.
That one?
Or Raheem's final game in Atlanta after New Year, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, those were awful. But listen, before we do, I would be remiss if we didn't say, because we've had some fantastic super chats, and we've also had some great donations on pewterreport.com. So if you don't want to give in the super chat, or if you don't know how, that's fine. If you would like to donate to pewterreport.com during this holiday season, you can go over to pewterreport.com/donation. And I'll take you to a page where you can give a one-time donation for as little as $10 or for any denomination you want. Or if you want to become a monthly donor, we'd love to have that. $3 a month is the lowest amount, and the highest amount is only $9 a month. So I think it's 3, 5, and 9 are your donation choices for the monthly option. And you can pay by credit card, or you can even do PayPal. So greatly appreciate that. We got a fantastic donation this week from a longtime follower, reader, listener, Kieran Reddy. And Kieran gave us a $50 Southwest gift card to assist with our travel expenses. So big thank you to our longtime Pewter Report follower, reader, and listener, Kieran Reddy, for that. And Kieran wanted us to give a shout out to some of his friends on the pod, his buddies, Red, Abby, and Chris. So go Bucs to you guys. And certainly thank you, Kieran, for that donation for the Southwest gift card, because we do fly Southwest, and we typically use Southwest points for that. So don't know that we're going to be able to go to.
Did you say his buddies' names were Red, Abby, and Chris?
Yes.
That just sounds like 3 characters I would want to hang around. I mean, think about that. Red, clearly a nickname. Abby, certainly, probably not from Polk County, and then just Chris. Chris.
Well, and even Kieran. I mean, Kieran sounds like
that's awesome. I want to hang with those guys. They sound like the original Wolfpack.
So we're probably not going to go to the first round game, but if there's a second round game, whether it's New Orleans, Seattle, Green Bay, probably would go there for that game. Our travel budget's limited this year, and we've also had to take some COVID precautions as well too. So have not been able to do the traveling. Last year, Mark, you and I went to London for the Carolina game, which is a really cool experience.
Man,
I went to where else did I go? I went to Jacksonville. Went there with Trevor and Grizz, and then Trevor and I also went to Carolina. So I got to go to 3 games. You went to LA last year for the Rams game.
LA, London, Detroit, and Tennessee.
Yeah,
and I had a tremendous time in great cities. I mean, it's fun, obviously, to go to new stadiums and new places, but it's fun to get away a little bit as well too. Now, we don't go and spend a week before that. We usually fly out like the Friday before the game. Yeah, even sometimes just the Saturday. But it's nice to get to a different city, see a different press box, try the different food, but mainly be able to be there in person to give you that coverage, that immediate coverage when we were inside the locker room. This year, it's not as crucial just because everything is done on Zoom.
That's right.
I mean, we could fly all the way to wherever. Fact is, the access is going to be the same if you're in your living room, really, if you're at the press box, because you're not going to see the players live. You're not going to be able to talk to them or get any breaking news. Everybody's going to get the same thing. But hopefully, certainly, these super chat donations, all those things will go to help fund this for next year when, knock on wood, everything is a little bit more back to normal and we can go and travel again. I haven't looked at the schedule, and I know that's a story that we will have out Sunday right after the game when the Bucs opponents are finalized. But I haven't even taken a peek. Most of them, we don't know when it's going to happen. That happens right before the schedule release. But we pretty much know the teams are going to play. There's one that's always open, and it takes until the Week 17 matchup to determine who that final opponent is. But we'll have that story up on Pewter Report Sunday as soon as the game is over.
Well, we know some of them: Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans. Obviously, right? That's home and away. The divisional opponents, and then we've got Let's see. Let me find the home and away here because I got a list of the opponents. Here we go. The home games: Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, and then a team from the NFC North. So if the Buccaneers finish second in the NFC North, in the NFC South right now, which it looks like I believe the Bucs will finish second. Yeah, they will. Yeah. They have to. So they're locked into the second because obviously New Orleans clinched the division. So the corresponding team in the NFC North is Chicago Bears.
Anybody. Oh, well, the NFC North. I was thinking East. Yeah, no, you're right. The North. Yeah,
NFC North. So that will be the Chicago Bears, and so that's a home game. So the Bears will come here, back just like the old days, right? When the Chicago Bears used to come and fill up the big sombrero mark. Yep. The away games. Well, the Bucs are playing the AFC East and the AFC or the NFC East. So
New England road trip. Tom Brady back to New England. Right. We are going to go to that somehow.
Yep. New York Jets, Jets, Jets. I got to think Matt Matera is going to go there, right? For sure.
He can't wear green.
Eagles. Yeah, right. Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington. They're not going to be the football team next year. They're actually going to choose a different name. They were the Redskins. They've decided to move on, so it's going to be the Washington something or others. So look for that nickname.
I wish they would just go with the something or others. That would be awesome. I don't know what their logo would be, but it would be cool.
Right. Just like a question mark, right? Like a something or other. You know,
we don't know what we are.
Washington something or others.
They should call themselves the Washington Haskins. No, too soon.
And then they're going to be playing the Buccaneers will be playing on the road a corresponding team with the NFC West. So right now, that's the Arizona Cardinals. So Bruce and Jason would get to go back home to play the Arizona Cardinals. Oh, no, I take that back. They would be the LA Rams right now. If the Cardinals are 8-7, the Rams are 9-6. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But it could be a return trip to LA to face the Rams for a third year in a row, Mark. Sometimes the schedule's quirky like that. And
I would love to go back to LA to be honest with you. That was other than London, that was probably my favorite road trip. California was great. Now, I do not want to be in LA currently right now. LA and California is a total mess and disaster. Yeah, I would not want to be there. But it was a great time last year, and that I want to see the new stadium there, the SoFi Stadium. But I'll tell you what was cool, Scott, about last year, and people probably don't care about this, but we're going to tell it anyway because it's our podcast. It was at the LA Coliseum. The history in that building, right? This is where John McKay used to coach the USC Trojans, and Ricky Bell won, and Archie Griffin, and you know the matchups in the games that have been played there. You know, Marcus Allen's of the world. You know, that was just in the '84 Olympics. You know, the Carl Lewis years, all of those things. To see,
hey, Ronald Jones loved playing there. You know? That's
that was a great stadium to go to, just from the historical advantage. And plus, Evel Knievel jumped like 16 buses in there one time too. So anytime you throw Evel Knievel in, it was awesome. But I want to go back to LA. You should go to LA too. It's a great trip.
I went to LA a long time ago, back in the '90s, and I would definitely like to head back there.
When you were trying to break into acting, right?
No, not at all.
No.
Edward Fernandez asks, do you think we will see a little bit more Herb Miller because of the interception? You know, Bruce loves believing in leaving the hot man in. Well, while Herb Miller got one interception, they're happy to have Carlton Davis back this week if he can play. But I will say this. If Carlton can't go, they've got no problems playing more of Ross Cockrell and then dressing Herb Miller for this game. So anytime you get limited playing time, you make something happen, that always bodes well in the eyes of the coaches. That's why Mike Edwards has gotten more playing time this year, Mark. Down the stretch, even though he's been beaten out for the starting job. He got 7 starts last year as a rookie, but his starting job was taken by Antoine Winfield Jr., the Bucs' second-round pick. But the times Edwards been in, he's made things happen with 2 interceptions this year, a fumble recovery, almost a scoop and score against the Saints. So certainly good stuff there from Herb Miller last week. Cartier Walker says, guarantee if Todd Bowles plays more man coverage, we will blow more teams out. I agree. Play more man coverage. That's critical, because whenever they've done that, I think that's been a huge.
Here's my thing, and I'm no X's and O's guys as much as maybe you and John goes, but just to me, What's frustrating is when they blitz and then they play a soft zone. I don't really understand that. I mean, if you're going to blitz, the quarterback's going to get the ball out of his hand probably very quickly. So
Right.
why are you playing 8 or 10 yards off the ball? I
Why
think
are you
that's
making it
when
easy?
man coverage is so crucial. And here's another thing though. Teams can't play man coverage 70 plays a game on defense. I mean,
Right.
the defensive backs can't run down the field, that many times. I mean, it takes a lot more exertion and energy for a
Yeah.
defensive back to play man coverage than it does zone coverage. But there are certainly times when we were screaming at our television, what in the world, or you're screaming in the press box, what in the world, is Todd Bowles thinking right here? And again, we're saying this, and this team is a top 10 defense, number one rushing defense overall, in the top 10, much improved over last year. But anyway, we're going to stay on it. It doesn't matter how good they are. This team could be going to the Super Bowl. If we find a weakness or something we think going to be better, it's our job as reporters to point it out. So,
Got to point it out.
Anyway.
Greg DeCruz says the Bucs have been so much better at not committing penalties or turnovers since the Brady meltdown. I guess that's against the Chiefs. Mark, Greg's got a great.
I think he's talking about the meltdown he had in the Bears game. Remember that Thursday night game when he went off on the sideline?
Yeah,
Is that what you're talking about, Greg? But you're right. The penalties have cut down. You're right. The Chiefs game was when things have really
here's
dropped.
the thing: no turnovers, Mark, since the bye week. No turnovers for this Bucs offense. And you look at the penalties: 5 penalties for 34 yards against the Minnesota Vikings, 1 penalty for 10 yards against the Falcons, 8 penalties for 65 yards against Detroit. The Lions had 10 penalties, so it wasn't like the Bucs even had the most penalties that day. You add up all the penalties, that's 14 penalties for 109 yards in 3 games. Mark, they had 11 penalties for over 100 yards in the Bears game alone.
Yeah.
So right now they're averaging just under 5 penalties per game and just 36 yards since coming out of the bye week with no turnovers. That's a recipe for success.
Scott, what do you always say? The best way to how do teams win? What's the first thing teams have to do? First rule of football:
don't beat yourself. And finally, this team has decided not to beat itself, and that's why they're winning games.
Yes.
And you go back to that Falcons game, Mark, and we'll bring it back to this preview here. The Buccaneers didn't have any turnovers against the Falcons. If they would have had 1 turnover, that would have eliminated a scoring possession, especially in the second half, and they would not have had enough time to come back and win. They had 1 penalty for 10 yards. So when you look at that valiant comeback that they made, 31 points in the second half of that game, and again, scoring on, I believe, every possession or just about every possession in the second half. But they had to play a clean game to have enough time to come back. And they did that. 1 penalty, no turnovers against the Falcons. Boy, if they had that same type of performance again, they're going to beat the Falcons for the second time this year, Mark.
I mean, you just said something that is so simplistic, Scott, that I've never really even thought about a whole lot. When you turn the ball over, you're turning over a possession. You're turning over a potential scoring opportunity. And not just that, you're giving the other team 1 extra opportunity to score. And I think that's the reason we saw this team 7-9 last year, as opposed to potentially 11-5 this year. I mean, you look at the turnover difference from last year to this year, particularly under center, and everybody knows I love Jameis Winston, but I don't believe this football team is sniffing 11-5 if Jameis Winston is the quarterback. And now the chat is going to blow up, and people are going to tell me I'm crazy or they agree with me. But it's just, I mean, again, there's a reason when Drew Brees went out, they turned to Taysom Hill too, I think. I mean, I really believe that.
Yep. Mark, we were there last year in London. Share My Year says, let's be honest, the pub in London was better than the game. That's right, the Admiralty Pub. We're great Bucs fans. We knew, speaking of Jameis Winston, a great segue to your point, first pass picked off in London. We looked at each other, we're like, here we go. Right?
You got to be kidding me, right?
Unreal.
And it just continued throughout the game. What did he end up with, 4 or 5 in that game? It was
5 interceptions. Mark, he had 3 interceptions. And remember, we had to leave about halfway through the fourth quarter to get down to the press box area. Or actually, I did. You stayed up there. They called for the media wanting to go to the locker room. And I looked at you and said, okay, I'll go. You stay up here and finish the game story. Mark, by the time I left, he had 3 interceptions. By the time I got down and walked all the way around Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to get there, it was like literally about a half a mile walk. He threw 4 interceptions, and we're sitting there waiting for the end of the game. And then we saw on the monitor, he threw interception number 5. It was a horrible day. But the Admiralty pub was great in London.
London, everything about, like, Scott, you know this. This is crazy, and Megan beats me up all the time because I did not want to go. Like, I was like, I don't want to get a passport. I don't want to fly across an ocean. I don't like airplanes. This is how dumb I am. This is how hillbilly and country I am. What is there to do in London? It sounds boring. And I was just amazed at what an amazing city. We met a good friend, Roger McQueen, that helped us out with some photography, but was a great tour guide. We met some of the great people, readers and things like that.
It was down by the Thames. We saw the Globe Theater, Shakespeare. We saw Big Ben. We saw the Eye of London.
We went into a pub that was established in 1627, right? Yes. The same pub. The United States wasn't even the United States in 1627. They've been drinking beer in this pub since 1627. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing in the United States that is old compared to the things that we saw in London.
Oh, just amazing. And the weird thing is it was raining while we were there. I was like, wow, why is it so wet here? But
cold, damp rain.
It was a little damp rain. But the one thing about Briar Greaves and our good friends at Briar Greaves is there's no dampness there. When you call those guys, it's like a ray of sunshine, Mark. It just is. You told me a long time ago, Mark.
Yes.
You said, Scott, like, you got to call Briar Greaves, not just because they're an advertiser, but you're a homeowner. And let them check out your homeowner's policy, see if they can find you a better rate, match whatever. And if they don't, then there's no obligation.
Exactly.
Well, right after you said that, I got a cancellation notice from my previous company over some kind of BS excuse about my property. And the first thing I did was I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna call Briar Greaves. And actually, I didn't call Briar Greaves. I'm not lying, but the first thing I did was I actually went to BriarGreavesInsurance.com, went to the website. Because sometimes when you have like a smaller kind of a mom and pop type business, it's not as professional as like the big slick insurance companies. No, that website is damn professional. And Briar and Sam are the most professional insurance agents around. And you know why? They've been serving the Tampa Bay area for 30 years. They got this down pat. So call Briar Greaves Insurance for your homeowners, auto owners, boat owners, life insurance, commercial insurance, and flood insurance needs. A lot of those homeowner policies, a lot of the homeowner companies, they're canceling. They're not renewing their policies. They're leaving Florida. They're increasing the premium rates significantly. Do what I did. Call Briar Greaves, speak directly to Briar and Sam. As you know by now, they're big Bucs fans. They'll talk Bucs football with you, and that's awesome. We appreciate them for being proud sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast and on pewterreport.com. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com or call 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. You'll be glad that you did.
And everybody listening in the United States, anyway, I don't know about you guys in Ireland and England and all over the world, but everybody needs insurance, some type of insurance, whether it's auto, home, life, boat, flood. There's an insurance need that you're paying for some type of insurance right now. Why not give Briar Greaves a call and let them just see if they can save you some money? If they can't, they can't. It's no big deal. But also let them know you appreciate them sponsoring this Pewter Report podcast. And Scott, you mentioned the professionalism of their website, and it's not a mom and pop website. What I love about going in and meeting with those people or talking to them on the phone is you get that personalized service, unlike the big box insurance companies, right? Where you're just a number, you're just a policy number. I mean, Briar, I got to know Briar when he just called me earlier this year, just say, hey, how you doing? I'm your insurance agent. Let's just go over your policy. Is there anything you need, anything you want to change? I mean, you don't get that from the big people. I mean, you get that from hometown service, and that's what I appreciate most about Briar Greaves. So make sure to give them a call if you will. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. You know what else we love, Mark? We love that super chat, 25 pounds from Derek O'Brien, our great friend from Ireland. Happy New Year all the way from Ireland. Congrats on all the success this year. My go-to Bucs info is on Pewter Report. Man, we really appreciate that, Derek, and we appreciate your previous super chats as well, and your participation. Actually, we appreciate everybody who takes the time to either watch us live or watch the replays or listen to the audio podcasts on SoundCloud or iTunes. We appreciate all the super chats. We appreciate everybody. You guys have made 2020 not suck, right? Because it sucked in a lot of ways because of COVID-19.
It still sucks, but you've made it better sucking.
You've made it a lot better, yeah. And listen, the Buccaneers too. They've really changed the narrative. As Mark and John and I have said in this podcast before, usually by now we're doing mock drafts. We're talking about future prospects that this team is going to be looking at in the draft. We're saving all that coverage for where it belongs in the offseason. Why? Because there's playoffs to talk about.
Yeah.
And speaking of playoffs, Mark, John and I talked about this the other day. I want to get your input. Long Lost Leisure asked, rank our actually, that wasn't the question from we'll do this one. We'll do this one, and then I'll get the other question from Long Lost Leisure. Rank our impending free agents on priority, Mark. Number 1, Levante. Number 2, Shaq. Number 3, Gronk. Number 4, Godwin. Number 5, Sue. Do you agree with that list, Mark, or is there a different order you would have those players ranked?
I really like. I would really put Godwin up a little bit higher up on the list.
Yeah, I'd put Godwin number 2.
Yeah, I would probably put him number 2, and go Shaq number 3. And I love Gronkowski. Who knows if he wants to continue to play? That's really going to be his call. This team wants him back. I don't think at $8 or $9 million, whatever they're paying him this year, maybe. Right. I don't know. Again, this is something that's going to be really interesting that we hope people will follow us throughout the offseason. Is going to be how the Buccaneers are going to be able to manage this salary cap, which is going to be reduced considerably over what it would normally be increasing this year. So
it was 198 million this year. It's going to get down to around 175 million.
Right.
This year, so it's just a $23 million decline. Usually it goes up $10 million each year. It's actually decreasing $23 million, or give or take a few $100,000 this year, or I should say for next year, for 2021. Now the Buccaneers, they're just over $30 million in terms of cap room. But the problem, look at this list, Mark: Levante David, Chris Godwin, Shaq Barrett. You might be able to get those guys for 36 million combined, right?
Maybe.
Maybe 2 of those guys for sure, right? But there's going to have to be some give and take for sure. I found the question there. So let me ask you this. Long Last Leisure wants to know, who would you rather play in the wild card, Washington or Dallas, or even the Giants, Mark?
Well, I would take the Giants. The Buccaneers have already beaten the Giants, and Daniel Jones is a terrible quarterback. So I would take the Giants over that. Secondly, I would probably take Washington because Alex Smith, if he does come back, if he's able to play, he's already gimpy. I'm not knocking his bad leg that he almost lost a couple years ago. I'm just saying he's got some injuries and has been banged up some this year since he took over that starting role. That team is kind of in turmoil. The whole Haskins thing, they looked awful last week. So I would say them. Dallas. A few weeks ago, I would have said Dallas, but they've beaten some decent teams this year. Yeah. They've played better as of late, and as John Ledyard pointed out in one of our group chats earlier this week, they've got a hell of an offense as far as receivers. And when you start looking at matchups, the Bucs secondary versus the Dallas receivers, that makes me a little bit nervous. Although Andy Dalton doesn't particularly scare me at quarterback, so I would probably take say Giants, Washington, then Dallas would be in the order of the teams that I would want to play.
Yep, I agree. Let's see here. Devin White, 10 sacks, no Pro Bowl. Media hate us. Well, he's got 9 sacks. I wouldn't be surprised. I said this in my 2-point conversion, my prediction at the end of my column. I wouldn't be surprised just because Devin White's hot right now rushing the passer, and he had 3 sacks against Atlanta before, and they were having some problems with their centers in terms of their health. And also James Carpenter, who gave up a sack in that game, the left guard. I wouldn't be surprised if Devin White gets 2 sacks in this game, finishes with 11, and ends up leading the team. I could see Jason Pierre-Paul getting a sack and having 10.5. But if you would have told me that Devin White would lead the team in sacks at the beginning of the year, I would have said, "Wow, that's surprising."
I would have said JPP and Shaq Barrett would have been injured in week 1, out for the year. If you would have told me that Devin White was going to lead the team in sacks, he's done a tremendous job. I mean, there's deficiencies in his game. We've pointed him out. He's not perfect, but we love his attitude. We love his work ethic, and he's doing all he can to be better. Hopefully, in off season, in person. Again, we don't know what the NFL is going to be like 3-4 months from now, but him being able to get on the field is going to help him in the pass coverage. You can't practice covering receivers coming out of the backfield or tight ends or even if you're stuck, in a zone in the middle and a receiver, you can't practice that in a Zoom call. You just can't do it.
No,
And
you're
those
right.
400 reps he missed on defense is hurting him a little bit. But
No, you're
what a great
exactly
guy.
right.
I would love to have seen him in the Pro Bowl. I think he probably deserved it, maybe even a little bit more over JPP. But if he ends up winning the sack title lead for the Buccaneers, then JPP should just hand him over his Pro Bowl trophy, because there is technically no Pro Bowl this year. They're
Right.
literally going to
Yeah.
play a Madden tournament, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like there's actually a game to go to and media and
Right.
all
And there's
that.
not going to be any of those injury substitutions, or so and so's
Right.
not playing the Pro Bowl because of the
Or
Super Bowl.
playoffs, or
Right.
playoffs. I mean, even
Right.
Super Bowl teams who championship, NFC and AFC championship teams and Super Bowl teams didn't usually, their guys didn't go to the Pro Bowl,
Right.
and there's not going to be substitution. What is somebody going to say? You know what? I don't feel like playing in the Madden tournament this year. I'm going to skip it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no. So what you see is what you get in terms of the
Yeah.
Pro Bowl guys this year. But I think too, Devin White is setting the stage for a possible Pro Bowl berth next year if he can be much better in pass coverage. He's going to make some serious strides there. And Mark, you pointed it out, and I think you're exactly right. I wrote about it in one of my last SR's Fab Fives. This whole group of second-year Buccaneers: Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean,
Yeah.
Mike Edwards, Anthony Nelson. Anthony Nelson has not ever played in a preseason game before. He missed
Right.
the first preseason with injuries his rookie year last year. This year there was no preseason. So I mean, Anthony Nelson's played in going on 30 some games at regular season. He's yet to even play in a preseason game in August. But I do think that once Devin White and Jamel Dean and even Scotty Miller, Anthony Nelson, everybody from that draft class in 2019, they're going to be better once they have all those offseason reps and OTAs and mini camps and a full training camp, not this truncated 3-week version we saw last year, but a full 5-week training camp. It's going to make all these guys better. Then you got Vita Vea back and OJ Howard back. And if you're excited about this year's Buccaneer team, I tell you, next year's Buccaneer team, look out. We got a great question here, and we're just wrapping up the pod. So let's make this our last question. Mo Rama asks, what grade would you give TB12, Mark? This is a guy that has 36 touchdown passes, set the franchise record. He's got 39 total when you add in those 3 rushing touchdowns, only 11 interceptions, and has been the catalyst for this playoff run. What grade do you give Tom Brady in his first year in Tampa Bay, in a new offense, in a new team with new teammates without an offseason?
Scott, you and I saw it from the very first day we got to go out to training camp this year. Just a different guy under center. And again, I'm not knocking the Brad Johnsons that we've seen, the Bruce Gradkowskis, the Trent Dilfers, the Jameis Winstons, the Mike Glennons, whoever it might be under center, Josh McCowns. This guy, there was just something different about him, the way he did things and the way that he redid things if he didn't like it done the first time, rerunning plays. And, he's such a perfectionist, and it's really rubbed off on the team. I think he's an A player without a doubt, if not an A-plus player. You can't find many weaknesses in his game, right? You would love to see him a little bit more mobile. You would love to see him hang on to the ball just a touch longer from time to time. But I mean, you can't argue with 11-5. I'm working on a column about how long it's been since the Buccaneers have been to the playoffs. Scott, in 2008, the first year after the Buccaneers went to the playoffs 2007, last time. 2008, right. They don't make the playoffs. They go 9-7 after starting 9-3. Guess what song was the top song on the charts back then?
In 2007, I have no idea.
Flo Rida had the top song. American Idol in its first season was the tops on TV. The Dark Knight was the top grossing movie.
That's a great movie.
I never saw it because I don't watch comic book movies. But my point is that just seems like 100 years ago, and it feels like that to Buccaneer fans. I remember walking out of Raymond James Stadium. Me and my son went to that game. He was 7 years old. He's 20 years old now, Scott. And they've lost a generation of fans with ineptitude over the last 12 years. So Buccaneer fans deserve this. The players, the organization. But you know who deserves it more than anybody? I really believe it's the fans. And I'm going to give a lot of that credit to Tom Brady for changing things for this Buccaneer organization.
Mark, I heard you say 11-5, and for that to happen, you know what that means. They got to win on Sunday. So let's go right to our predictions for this last podcast of 2020. It's our Falcons Bucs preview podcast. So let's hear from you, Mark Cook. What's your score for Sunday? How is Sunday going to shake down for the Buccaneers? 11-5 or 10-6 heading into the playoff?
It's going to be 11-5. I think this is the game where the Falcons, again, they don't Detroit check out, and you've made a great point, but they've tried, Scott, to finish games. They just can't do it. It's the end of the year. Julio, if he's smart, will sit out. Alex Mack, if he's smart, he'll sit out. There's a lot of guys that probably should just sit out with some lingering injuries. Raheem Morris wants to win this football game, but I think he knows now that he's not going to be the coach of the Falcons. Had they beaten the Buccaneers, had they been able to beat the Chiefs, there was a couple other games that they lost, and the Saints, they played the Saints very close a few weeks ago. If they win those games, then maybe Raheem has a chance, but I don't think he really has a chance. Although Rich McKay said he will be interviewed, they're going to go outside the box and start all over. But I don't think this team is trying to win this game for Raheem Morris. I think they want to get in, get out, not get hurt, and start all over, because they know that the whole organization is lame duck right now. They don't know who their coach, the general manager, is going to be. They don't know if Matt Ryan's going to be back, although it's $48 million cap hit. He probably will be. But are they going to draft a new quarterback at the number 4 position for the future? So many unanswered questions. I just think the Buccaneers whip them pretty good. I'm going to go 38-20 for my final.
Wow.
And Ronald Jones gets his 100 yards. He gets 101. And Mike Evans ends up with 1,005 yards. He's not going to be like Mike Williams a few years ago, who dropped a pass that would have put him over 1,000 yards, ended up with 996 on the season. Mike will get his 1,000.
Like you, Mark, I think the Bucs will finish 11-5. I originally said way back in my Pewter Report roundtable about a month ago, when we were talking about the Bucs finishes, I thought they would finish 3-1, but I like the way they've taken care of business, and really getting that win in Atlanta was key, because I thought that was the one they were going to drop. I thought they beat the Vikings. That game in Atlanta was one I was a little concerned about. But believe it or not, that week I actually said the Bucs would win, because I like what they did against the Vikings. So I think they're going to go 4-0 down the stretch here. Bucs win to beat the Falcons 33-23. I think it's a little closer on the scoreboard, but I think the Falcons get a late score and kind of like dress it up a little bit. But I think Tampa Bay has a lead at halftime in this game. I like what they did in the first quarter against the Lions, kind of got that monkey up their back. And I do see this team going 11-5. They're on a mission. They're playing well. They want to continue to play well, and I think they're going to get the job done there. So a couple of other scores to post here from some of the fans. And guys, we really appreciate your time and attention, and the great questions and comments,
donations,
super chats. Yes, and the super chat donations. And for all of the love you've given pewterreport.com by visiting the website, and for interacting with us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Greatly appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast yet, you can do so on YouTube. Go to youtube.com /Pewter Report TV. Pewter Report TV, that's how you find us. Click on the subscribe button and then click on notifications, and you will be notified every time we go live. So no podcast tomorrow. Enjoy New Year's Eve. Enjoy the New Year's. 2021's around the corner. The Buccaneers want to ring in the new year with their 11th win of the season on Sunday at 1 o'clock at Raymond James Stadium. I'll be there, and we'll have a podcast for you wrapping up the regular season Sunday night at 7:30. And so on behalf of Mark Cook and myself and John Ledyard and Taylor Grizz Jenkins and Matt Matera and Hugh MacArthur and Allison Pendrick and Cliff Welch and Kyle Thiel and the folks at Visual Realm and everybody on the Pewter Report staff and our extended families, we want to say Happy New Year to you, and we will see you again on Sunday for the next edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.